So, you know, when the internet was first invented or created, denizens of the world were like, okay, what's the big deal?
Can you explain what internet is?
Well, Gearbox is kind of like the internet, just way ahead of its time, and Raphael, the owner of Gearbox, has been streaming videos to his smartphone over Wi-Fi, while the rest of us have been on 56K modems trying to figure out how email works.
Oh, that's
that little mark with the A and then the ring around it?
At?
See, that's what I said. You write to it like mail?
But you too can now have a taste of the future, all neatly packaged in pure carbon fiber at the price of $275. Now, is $275 too much for a pickleball paddle? Probably. Would I fault you for paying that much for one? Not if it's currently the best paddle on the market right now.
Shut up and take my money!
Because this thing is incredible. You're probably wondering just how incredible it is and how it stacks up to $230 to $300-ish paddles out there, and that's what we're here to find out in this video. And unfortunately, you are gonna have to pay that price tag of $275 if you want it, because I couldn't secure a code for you guys. There is a link in the description below you can use to help support the channel though, just saying. The new Pro line boasts 4 distinct models, all equipped with elongated shapes, available in both power and control configurations. In addition to the introduction of the Fusion model, which showcases a new shape for Gearbox. More on that later. Let's first talk about the power models. The first thing you might be asking yourself when you see that price tag of $275 is, what do I get from that extra $25 to $130 that I'm paying that I can't get from the other hundreds of options out there? Which is a valid question. My first response to that question is the sound and the noise. The Pro models have a noticeably lower pitch when compared to polypropylene, Nomex, Kevlar, wood, etc. That alone I think is worth the extra money, especially if you are in a very sensitive neighborhood where noise can be an issue. Now don't get it twisted, these paddles still make some noise, but it's just a bit quieter and more pleasing now, in my opinion. In fact, the first thing most people will notice when they hit these paddles is the reduction in noise, especially in the power models. The control models, while a bit quieter than the paddles of old, is not quite the silent assassin that the power model is. Now, the next thing I would like to go over about why I wouldn't fault you for paying that extra cash for these paddles is just the construction of these paddles and also the tech behind them. If you are unfamiliar with Gearbox, they make their paddles completely constructed out of carbon fiber, from the core to the face and through the handles. These things are built to last and would probably be the only company I would pay full retail for a paddle just on the build quality alone. While we're on the topic of construction, let's quickly go over the aesthetics and the tech behind the paddle. The build is just miles ahead of anything else out there. It feels substantial in the hand, and you can immediately tell this is a quality product. Compare that to, say, the Engage Pursuit Pro, another $250+ paddle that also performs very well, and the Gearbox Pros blow it out of the water in terms of build quality. The Gearbox Pro paddles still have the familiar shapes that you're used to, at least with the elongated versions. The new Fusion shape is essentially the elongated model with 1/2 inch chopped off the top. I personally would have liked to see some of that real estate go to widening the paddle face, but I don't dislike the new Fusion shape. In fact, I might actually prefer it. There is a decal that wraps around the edge of the paddle that helps bond the raw carbon fiber face to the core. It doesn't really bother me, but I could see some people finding that this may look cheap when compared to their previous edgeless offerings. All the paddles are 14mm in thickness and utilizes an updated and improved version of Gearbox's solid span core technology. I won't bore you with the details, but the SST core in their previous paddle uses carbon fiber tubes to create a rib-like structure that helps shape the ball, but this new core has some updates to it. There's some filaments running against it at 180 degrees. It essentially creates a matrix or a web that allows for a more isolated area of the paddle face to flex when making contact with the ball, which gives the pop and power you find in these paddles. If you want more information about it, I'm sure John Q goes over it in much greater detail, so go check out his video and review on the paddle as well. Now, what this means in terms of performance for you is that the paddle essentially pockets the ball and creates a strong trampoline-like effect when swinging at higher speeds. However, the thin core gives the paddle a very satisfying pop on blocks and punch volleys also. Now, would you pay that extra $100 or so for both power and pop? You know, who am I kidding? Of course you would, because if you're watching this thinking about buying this paddle, you're probably a filthy banger and you just want validation that it's as powerful as all the paddle reviewers have been saying. You know who you are. But on the real though, the speed and power coming from the power models are pretty much unmatched when compared to other paddles competing in this price range or any other price range really, USAP approved legal ones anyway. The power model is essentially just a step below a full-on EVA foam paddle, and the control model is not too far behind that. If you are familiar with how quickly the ball comes off an EVA foam paddle or a delaminated paddle, that will give you an idea of the power and pop that you can expect. The main difference is that your drives will actually go in with the proper technique. Chris from the Pickleball Studio and myself have adopted the name given to the power model by the Prince of Pickleball, the D Lamborghini, which I think is kind of fitting, and although its power is similar to that of a delaminated paddle, I don't think you're going to have any issues of the core corrupting or core crushing with these SST cores. The control model is not that far off in terms of power and pop as well. Its performance is on par with the likes of the SELKIRK Power Air, another $250 plus paddle, but with a much better touch. I would say more similar to the CX14 from Gearbox. Now usually paddles with this much power comes with some trade-offs in the control department usually, but you won't find too much issue here. The responsive SST core is very intuitive to me. In fact, every single person I've put these paddles in the hands of have said something to the degree of I'm switching or I could get used to this. Dinks, drops, resets, while it takes a bit of time and adjustment to, it's not difficult to overcome. The feedback from the paddle is solid and firm, but has a plush quality about it that is oddly satisfying when making contact with the ball, whereas other traditional honeycomb paddles have a much more hollow feel by comparison. All right, before I wrap this up, let's just briefly talk about spin. Now, spin potential is a very interesting thing because many factors go into helping a paddle generate spin. The older Gearbox paddles, primarily the CX14 line, I thought got acceptable spin even with their low textured surface. The idea that the ball compresses and the core wraps around the ball, you know, like this to generate spin was a bit foreign to me at the time, but I saw it firsthand from the paddle and how texture and grit isn't everything when it comes to the spin performance of a paddle. With that being said, the added raw carbon fiber face has been a welcome addition to this latest entry from Gearbox, and it clearly shows how much it can help increase the spin. Both the control and the power models are in the upper echelon when it comes to high spin performing paddles, and to be quite honest, it has to be, especially if you want to be able to control the type of pop and power that this paddle can generate. So is it dope or no? Well, clearly it's dope. Gearbox has a clear winner on their hands that pretty much checks all the boxes and exceeds many of my expectations and expectations of other players and paddle reviewers out there. I think you will soon see a lot more of these paddles out there in the wild. And if you are in the market for a new paddle and have the cash to spare, I don't think you can go wrong with any of these paddles.
Shut up and take my money.
But my only gripe is that the fusion shape is not a bit wider, and if I had to choose one of these paddles to play with, it would probably be the elongated control or the fusion power. Although I really love the power series in this line, I probably play best with the control model. I think the pros will be complaining about this paddle and even some ruck players too. So use these paddles at your own discretion. I don't know if all this increase in power is good for the game, but I think we are nearing a tipping point when it comes to the amount of pop and power that can and should be generated by these paddles if we aren't there already. All right, that's it for this video. Till next time, play better. Peace.
Are a lot of people just getting on to the internet because they feel that they have to get onto the playing field, so to speak?
Well, it's very hip to be on the internet right now.
Oh, that's
That little
right.
mark with the A and then the ring around it.
At?
See, that's what I said. Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd never heard it.
Around
I'd never
or
heard it
about.
said. I'd always seen the
Right.
mark, but never heard
Yeah.
it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it.